Well, hello everyone. This is Genesis Hey Krick here with another segment of Shine on Women. I am so excited to be here today. And as you know, we are constantly bringing light to the world and bringing amazing messages from incredible women. And speaking of light and shining this morning, we have an amazing guest with us who I just absolutely love and totally connected with the last time we were together. And we had an opportunity actually to connect in her community as well as another Facebook community. She has a community called Light Beamers, and it just completely resonates light. And her name is April Pertuis. Did I say that right?
Pertuis, but that's close. You were good.
Okay. I want to have a French influence on it. So yes. And she has just done so much with this community. Do you want to share a little bit about that community, April, today?
I would be happy to. It's my favorite thing to talk about. So thank you, Genesis, for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here with you and your audience. And yes, I have an online community called the Light Beamers Community. And that space is really about encouraging other women. We do have a few men in our group, but it's definitely a feminine energy that takes place in there, but it's mostly women. And it's all about really encouraging women to use their voice and to share their stories. Because I really believe, and I know from my personal experience and my background and what I do, that sharing stories is such a really powerful way of shining a light into the world. When we share our stories, we allow other people to connect with us, and it may give them permission to share their own story. It may give them inspiration to tackle a challenge. It may give them hope to know that there is possibility and opportunity up ahead, even though if they're kind of stuck dealing with challenges. Our stories can just do so much for other people when we show up and share them. It allows us to have a camaraderie and have a feeling of we're not alone, right? Like we're not the only ones walking this walk, that there are other women that have gone before us and we can learn from their stories. So I really encourage women in that space to number one, to just show up and be visible, to not hide, and to use their voice. And then, of course, through the course of that community, and I try to teach them more about the mechanics of sharing their story, and just giving them really good tips about how to effectively get their message into the world.
And that is so needed today more than ever before. People need to be able to hear those messages of hope and encouragement and inspiration. And I just love that we have such a similar motivation behind what we're doing and helping people, and just sharing a message that's really going to resonate with individuals that need to hear it. And Light Beamers, I love that name. How did you come up with the name?
Well, that's an interesting story. So before I really created Light Beamers or had the idea of Light Beamers, I'm going to just back up just a little bit. My background is as a journalist, storyteller, video producer. I've made a career out of telling stories. So I've done it my entire life. And about 3.5 years ago, roughly, I was kind of at a crossroads. I really was at a place in my career where I kind of was just thinking, is this it? Even though I love what I do, I have been doing it for so long that I started thinking, what else can I do to sort of amplify things, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest things that I really did go into a place for several months of just inward thinking, personal reflection, lots of, internal questioning, and a lot of prayer, lots of prayer, and a lot of asking God, like, what would you have me do? How can I use my voice, right?
Yeah.
And I really felt that I wanted to return to my storytelling roots, but in a different way. I wanted to really be more in control, because my career has been always someone hires me and pays me to go on a project, and there's a very specific story they want me to tell, right? Which is fine. I can always say yes or no, but I didn't really get to create all that I knew was possible. I didn't at that point had not created all that I knew that was possible.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I just decided there was just space for me to create a platform myself. If I wasn't finding it elsewhere, create it. And during that time, so this is kind of the strange craziness of the whole story of the name behind Light Beamers. During that time, when I was having these ideas, having these thoughts, having this prayer, having this conversation with God, I started having an experience where I was hearing and seeing and literally dreaming of one word, and it was the word light. And I had never had an experience like this before in my life. But I literally, if I was journaling, I would sort of go into a meditative state, which is often what I do when I journal. And I would go back and read what I had written. And I was literally like writing the word light over and over again. And when I would read, the other words on the page were disappearing or going blurry. And the word light was literally like in 3D jumping off the page.
So
and so cool. But at the time I was like, what in the world, right? This is a little odd. But the key thing about that is that during that time, even though all of this was happening, like I would dream about the word, I would close my eyes and I would see it in the darkness. I would see the words light up. And I really never thought that I was crazy. Like I never had that moment where I was really questioning. I just knew immediately and instinctively that this was really a gift that was being handed to me. And it was a word from God. And I did not know at the time what it meant, but I really started thinking about that word. And to me, it means light as in being not heavy. Like we just want, women, we want things to not be heavy, right? And it also meant, a thing that you shine in the darkness. So it is like a way out, right? It's a guiding light. And so I started thinking more about storytelling as a way to share stories that did those two things, that made things less heavy for women, and it gave them light out of a darkness. And that was really how Light Beamers was born. I started just literally writing a blog. I thought I will just get online and I will write a blog and I'll share these great stories, and that will be, we'll call it a day, like this will be amazing. And that's really what I did in the beginning. And I did start the community, the private Facebook group, Light Beamers Community at that time. But at the time, I really just thought I would create space. I would create a platform for other people to then, make the magic happen. And that has happened. But of course, since then, that's evolved to where, as I kept showing up and sharing my story and encouraging other people to share their story, finally, women started coming to me privately, and they were saying, but April, we don't know how. We don't know how to tell our story. We don't know how to find the words. We don't know how to get rid of all the junk that is in our head, that, all those details, because your whole story, right? You know everything. So how do you determine what other people need to know about you? And that was an eye opener. And I see now that, God was just laying the plan for me. He was just laying a track and helping me build that platform to where now I can help women. I don't only just encourage them now, but I can actually give them structure and advice and trainings and teaching, them how to actually put their story together. So that's really, how it all evolved. And it's been such a really beautiful experience. And I will tell you, it's been transformational for me. It is definitely part of my own personal transformational story.
I love that. And I couldn't think of somebody that's more appropriate to be on this podcast, because literally that's part of my intro, women shining their light in this dark world. So,
yes. Definitely, God has been speaking to both of us through the same message. There's no doubt. There's no doubt about that. And that's really beautiful.
And it's such a great, noble thing that you're doing, because women's stories can be so challenging, and finding the right way to be able to share that with an audience. I personally can understand that, because there can be some hesitations going into that process of, peeling back those layers and the challenges of the things that you went through when you were experiencing that. So some people and myself included, have a hard time sharing that story because it hurts and because they don't know what people are going to think about the story. Just how to be able to release that. And I think that what you're doing is just incredible, because you're allowing them that opportunity to let that go, essentially, and then also to basically plan it out in a way that it's organized, and that people are really going to be able to resonate with that. So
Yeah, and I think one thing that I have figured out and what I try to share with other women is that if you can really think of your own story, and once you kind of have all the pieces together that you want to share, right? When you start sharing it, to really understand that at that point, your story is no longer about you.
mm,
When you're sharing it, it actually is about other people.
yes.
And when you can give your story away freely without any expectation or any thoughts of like what other people are going to think, right? Or, what if it's not well received? What if it doesn't resonate? Well, like women can like, what if ourselves to death? We're really good at that. But if we can learn to like put that voice on mute long enough to actually share the story and think about giving it away freely without an expectation of any kind. I'm just going to give it, I'm going to share it, I'm going to speak it, and whoever needs to hear it will hear it. And that's all you have to do.
Yes.
And so you really give that story away and release ownership of it and give it away to someone else because they need it. And that's a process that doesn't happen when you first start doing story work. It definitely is kind of a personal development thing, but that's why story work is so important. I've learned through all of this that my message really is more, I thought it was going to be mechanics of like how to teach women to do storytelling, right? But I've learned through my own process that, this is really important personal work. And it can be very emotionally healing and it can be freeing. And once we learn to do that, go through the process, identify our story, really, connect with it, honor it, own it, and then release it. It's in the releasing of it when you give it to other people and you share it freely that true magic happens. And I just want to get women to that point.
Yeah. And I can say from personal experience that it is so healing. And
It
for women
is.
that actually go through that process to be able to get to the point where they can share that story, when you see the impact that it can have on other people, you are just completely transformed, as you were just sharing. It's such a incredible process that gives you peace, and knowing that it is making a difference for other women, and then sharing that experience with them, because we don't know what they've experienced before. And there are a lot of people that can actually relate to a lot of the things that we've been through. We think that we're alone in our situation, but then we come to find there's people that come out of the woodwork and they're like, I know exactly what you're talking about. And, tears are flowing, and it's just such an incredible experience. So I just absolutely love that. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about, how people can get plugged in with you, and also just the way that people go about the storytelling process and what that looks like. So what would you say? I mean, we've already kind of been talking about the importance of storytelling and what it can do for someone, and for the release of someone being able to share it, and then also for the audience that they're speaking to. But how would you say that you can simplify your personal story for maximum impact? What would you say to somebody that was interested in learning more about that?
Well, I share on my website a free storytelling guide that I would, number one, direct anyone that wants to kind of really walk through the process. I would direct them to that. Just in the formula that I share is there. And so that's just at lightbeamers.com, all one word. And you can go to free storytelling guides. I believe it's under, we can share a link maybe, but it's under storytelling services. It'll be pretty easy to find. But in that, I share a pretty simple formula, and I'm going to give that to you today as well. But if you want to just go back and have like a little workbook that you can work through it, and be reminded of it, you will find it there.
Okay.
Really, it's so simple. I want you to think of your story when you start to figure out your own personal story and how to, like, what you need to share with an audience, right? Um, I want you to think about, I call it the storytelling arc, but I want you to think of it like a mountain. Okay, so we're going to go up and over a mountain. People can visualize a mountain, and there's a lot of symbolism with the mountain as well.
Mm-hmm.
So at the one side of the mountain, the base of the mountain, before you start your climb, that's really the before. So when you start sharing your story, you want to figure out what is the important historical context that you need to share with the audience so that they kind of know a little bit of history about you. They need to know a little bit of your background and like where you were starting before taking the transformational journey up and over that mountain, right?
Mm.
So you're going to try to figure out, what was that? What a lot of people make mistakes on in sharing their story is they have the whole journey in their brain, right? And they start sharing their story like in chronological order. Well, first I did this, and then I did that. And then with each step, they start sharing a lot of details. And storytelling just goes off the rails real quick when you share almost too much, right? So this framework ideally will help you eliminate some of the unnecessary details. Like, I don't really have to know where you were born and how many siblings you were raised and what degree you got in college, unless that is really key information to the point of your story. Like, every story has a point, right? Yeah. So think about, what is the point of your story? Like, what is the message that you think you have to share? And then work your way backwards. Well, where did that start, right? What was the before? What's the historical context that people need to know? For me, in teaching storytelling, it is important for me to share a little bit about like my work, right? Like my experience, that I started as a journalist, a young journalist, and that I have a background in that work, which has allowed me to then teach what I now teach, right? So that's important information. Otherwise, people are wondering, well, what authority are you, right? So you want to think about your before. And then, so from the before, at the base of your mountain, you're going to start climbing up that mountain, right? And so think about it. When you're climbing up a mountain, it's hard work. You're like, this is, you keep looking up and all you see is more mountain. You're just like, oh my gosh, when is it ever going to end, right? So that's not necessary. That's a lot of details. There's a lot of experience in that climbing of the mountain. And you may want to identify like a moment that you want to share with your audience, but you, again, do not need to give the chronological order of what it was like every step of the way up your mountain. You only need to give maybe one little micro story, a story within a story, to let people know what that journey was like. And then at the top of the mountain is a really key component of your story, and it's what I call the transformation or the shift. So when you get to the top of a mountain and you all of a sudden, you see the vista, you see the view, you're at the top, and your perspective changes. There's something that happens that sometimes in some people's life, it's an event, or it's a series of events, or it's just part of the process, right? Like finally you start to understand what it's all about and your perspective changes. So at the top of the mountain, you need to identify where in your own life and in your own experience, and this may relate to business, in your own business, where did that transformation take place? And what was that like? The other key part of storytelling is that each piece of the mountain that you want to share, you need to let your audience know, how did that make you feel? So in the beginning, wherever you were at the beginning, down at the bottom of the base of your mountain, don't forget to share really important emotional connective words. Like, let people know at that stage of your life, were you stuck? Were you confused? Were you happy? Were you unhappy? Let people know your emotional state, or adjectives that describe that phase of your life. That's the wording that people will connect with. So then same thing, when you get up to the transformation, what was it like when you had this aha, like you got to see things differently, your perspective shifted. What did that feel like? How did that make you feel? Then on the other side of the mountain, right, it's a lot easier going down. You're just like, oh my gosh, this is so much easier. We've done the hard work. Now I get it. The other side, which is what I call the last piece of the storytelling arc, it's the other side. It's the other side of your mountain.
Mm-hmm.
What have you learned? Always on the other side of that transformation, you do have some perspective now, and you can look back and you can go, oh, that was the point of my climb. That's why I had to work so hard. Now it all makes sense, right? So what was the lesson that you learned? How did that make you feel? And what do you want that lesson to be for other people? What is the message that you think your story now holds for others? This is when you're finally able to start to give that story away freely, as I referred to earlier. Once you've done that work and you've honored the space that you were in all along your journey, you've identified it, then you can let it go. You can say, okay, now the story is for other people. I've lived it. I've accomplished it. I understand it now. Now I can let it go and let it serve someone else. So, like for me, as I told you, my transformational moment definitely was the creation of Light Beamers, because I did feel like it was divinely inspired and that it changed me. It absolutely changed me and the way I approach storytelling. And the lessons that I now have on the other side of my own transformation, I can look back at my entire career and see how I had to go through all those things and all the experiences and learning the craft of storytelling so that I can be on the other side now telling other women, you have a story within inside of you that's so worth getting out. It's so worth sharing. Identify what that story is. Let's start sharing it so that it can be a message for other people. So that's a really simple framework for you to be able to walk up and over that mountain, identify like 3 or 4 little, pieces along the journey, the before, maybe the walk, the climb up, a little bit about that, the transformation, and then the other side, which is the lessons you've learned and the message you now have to share with others. But the key piece is to not forget to let people know, how did that make you feel? Include those emotional words. A great example is, if you are, let's say that someone is a health and wellness coach, right? And so they teach men and women how to live healthy lives, how to have really good nutrition, how to get on a workout program. We can all relate to that. We probably have hired someone like that in our life, right? And let's say that Susie is a client of this health and wellness coach, and she has taken the program, she's, accomplished her goals, and she's lost 60 pounds. And so when she goes back and tells her story, she's like, well, when I started this program, I was 60 pounds overweight, and I got on this nutritional program and I got on a workout routine. And I finally realized that that was the thing that I was missing. I just wasn't being consistent. I wasn't being, committed, because that's really probably the main ingredient to losing 60 pounds is being consistent and being committed, right? And then, I'm getting a signal. Am I still there? Because it said my signal was unstable for a minute.
You're good.
So when you share that story, when that client shares her story and she says, yeah, I got on the program, I did the work, and I've lost 60 pounds. Well, that's great, but we have not really understood how that made her feel, right? And I can imagine that if you lose 60 pounds, there's some emotional language that you're not telling us if that's all you say about your journey. And as a viewer or listener of that story, I may not need to lose 60 pounds, right? I may be sitting there thinking, well, that's great for you, but what does your story have to do with me? Because I don't need to lose 60 pounds. Mm-hmm. But when she changes that and adds in the really important piece of how that made her feel, then her story will start to sound a little bit different. Before I started on this workout routine and nutritional program, I was a busy mom that just felt like lost. I felt that I had gained all this weight through having babies, and that I was no longer the vibrant woman that I once was. And I felt like, honestly, that I didn't have a lot to offer the world anymore, because I felt shame. I felt guilt. Mm-hmm. I felt, really disgusted that I couldn't get this one piece of my life under control. Yeah. And then I got on this really amazing program, and I finally decided to get committed, and I decided to do the work. And then through it all, I've lost 60 pounds. And I will tell you that when I've lost the 60 pounds, I now feel the best I've ever felt in my life. I feel like I'm, 20 years old again. I feel like I have my body back. I have my life back. I have my vigor for life back. I can be a better mom. Okay, now I'm sitting there listening to that story. I may not need to lose 60 pounds, but I'm like, you know what? I'm going to the gym tomorrow because I also want to be recommitted to my own health. I want to be the best mom I can be. I want to have that vigor for life. I know what it feels like to feel like a slug. I get it. So now I'm connecting to that person's story because she told me how she felt. I didn't connect to it before when she was just saying, I need to lose 60 pounds, and I did. Because I'm thinking, well, that's great, but I don't. Right? Do you see the difference? It's so important to include that. How did it make you feel all along your journey?
That was so beautiful, April. And you just sharing that and how you go about sharing your story, I could get a complete visual of exactly what that looked like. So I can really tell you're an expert at what you do. And that beautiful visual of just that process. So, I can see how that can make a tremendous impact for anyone that's wanting to learn how to do that. And, sharing your story doesn't have to be difficult. It can be very simplistic. And as you said, you don't have to put together every single detail that, and I think a lot of people want to do that. When they're sharing stories, they feel like they need to incorporate every single thing in that. And as you had said, where you were born, or, if it doesn't relate to the story, it's not necessary. And I think that that's a really great piece of advice because, when you think over the course of a period of time, I mean, if you're sharing a story that happened, possibly over 10 years or something like that, I mean, it
and a
could
lot of
be a
people
long period of time.
Yeah,
So people
exactly.
are thinking, well, there's a lot that I've got to share here. This is going to take forever. How am I going to do this? But if you hone in on those key points on what's most important and what's completely relevant to the story and the outcome of the story, that's going to be the most impactful and important pieces to insert there.
Yeah, and that's what I started realizing, honestly. I have known how to do that because number one, I was trained, like I went to school to be a journalist. I kind of learned a little bit of that information and how to ask really good questions of people and what are the important questions to ask as, an interviewer. That's what I do. When I realized, sorry, my dog is barking. What I realized when women started coming to me and they're like, well, we don't know how to do that, and it was such an aha for me because I'm like, wow, they really don't. I get it. And that when I started evaluating good storytelling versus, not so great storytelling, the not so great storytelling, that's where people were going off course. They were just sharing entirely too much.
Yeah.
And honestly, the stuff that really didn't matter. Like it was, that's not the stuff that the audience wants to hear. And once again, when you come at it from the approach of, I need to share this information so that it impacts someone else, because we're doing it with a service mindset, then that becomes a lot easier to really think about how does this impact the person that's going to be receiving my story, right? What do they need to know? They don't need to know the life history. They need to know the critical pieces along your journey that had impact.
Yes. And what's really neat about that too, and we'd kind of talked about this before, is that as people are sharing their stories and they're getting the experience of doing this and they're feeling more comfortable in the process, they not only can do it for an audience of people, but they also can do it on video. So and that's something also that you talk about and you help your clients with. So maybe you could provide a little information on how to get more comfortable also in front of the video camera.
Yes. This is such a huge one nowadays because we have social media. I mean, before, video was always kind of reserved for the professionals, right? You didn't need to be on video unless you were a professional in your field and you needed to do like a reel or something, or you were someone like me that had a background in video, right? Video's changed dramatically. With the onset of social media, because we now have this thing called live streaming. We have the capability to upload and share videos, all over the place with YouTube and Facebook and Instagram stories. I mean, we can just go on and on and on about all the different places you could be using video. And it's not just a professional viewpoint anymore. It's
Right.
now for everybody. We all have free, instant access to it. All you need is a phone, really, and pretty much everyone has one of those.
Mm-hmm.
So the onset of live streaming really kind of again woke up that side of me that was like, wow, people don't know how to do this. They don't know how to effectively. They know how to. Some people are using it, but they're not really using it effectively. So that was a wake up call for me as well. Okay, now I got to not only get women to share their story, but now I got to teach them how to put it on video, because again, that is such a great way to reach your audience. And so by putting yourself on video, once you learn how to do it properly and really effectively, you have a real golden opportunity to make connections.
Oh, yeah.
Once again, we are all having a human experience, and we are all after connection. And that's really the beautiful part of social media. It has allowed us to connect with people in a way that we were not able to connect with people before. And with video, that just amplifies the process, and it really speeds it up. So if those people that are out there on social media that are using live streaming, and they're connecting with their audience, and they're showing up, and they're just really sharing their story from that standpoint and using video to do that, their audience is able to really get to know that person so much quicker than it would be of like going to their website and reading their blog, or reading the emails that they send out, or just not knowing anything about them, right? Maybe just reading their social media post, but that you just can't get the same information about that person from the written word. I love the written word. I'm a huge fan of the written word. But I do also know that there is so much power in video, that if you can really embrace sharing your message on video, you are going to exponentially make a connection with your audience. And again, if you have a business a business to share, and you're trying to really get, your book out into the world, or your products or your services out into the world, you most definitely need to be using video because your clients and your audience and your potential clients could be connecting with you that way. So that's now another thing that I am big on in my Light Beamers community. We started last year. I started picking a particular day in the group. It's Wednesday. And I said, okay, a lot of people need to be using live streaming, but a lot of people are scared. They don't know how to do it. They've never done it before. They've never been on video before. They're scared to death. Well, what can I do? I can create space, once again, creating the platform. And so I opened up the community, and we still do this to this day, on Wednesdays, to invite women to show up and do a live stream. And for some of them, it's the first time that they do it, right? And then it's awkward, and it's nerve-wracking, and you don't know where to look, and you don't know what buttons to push on your phone or on your computer, but you get over that. Once you do it, then right? So then you come back the next Wednesday and you do it again. And when you show up, you get a little bit better, and you're like, okay, now you got people commenting and cheering you on, and I will come in there and give you some feedback as well. And then it just, you get more comfortable. And so I've had women in my community that they've been doing Wednesday live streaming since I started it last year, and they've shown up almost every Wednesday. There are some that pop in and out, but there are some that just say, I'm going to absolutely use this. And now they are, of course, they're live streaming everywhere, not just within our community. They've got, their own business pages, or their own groups, or just their personal page. And they're making massive connections with people as a result. They're growing their business, they're growing their confidence, which is definitely something not to be overlooked. If we can get women to really step into their power and be confident in who they are and what they have to offer the world, we can change the world. I truly believe that. I know that sounds kind of Pollyanna, but it's so true. I really do believe it. And so, yes, it's about using video, but there's so much more behind it. It's about getting us to be confident, getting us to use our voice, being willing to show up and be seen, like literally be seen, right? Yeah. Visibly be seen. And there's just a lot that can do for your self-confidence with that.
Sure.
And it's, you may not be doing it for a business or any other personal gain other than just, I want to be better at being me, right? I just want to
Yeah.
show up more authentically. I want to get rid of the nerves. I want to get rid of the fear and just do it.
Yeah.
So I'm really big on that. I'm a big fan of live streaming, and I do encourage women to step into it.
Well, and now more than ever today, it is important to be able to do a video because you can share your message worldwide. You can connect with anyone and everyone, essentially, anybody that has access to a computer or a phone. And that is so cool because you can touch lives that, even 10 years ago you would never be able to connect with. So
Yes,
it's amazing how things have evolved to the point that they are right now. And I think that we need to be able to take advantage of what we have right in front of us to be able to share that message with the world. And
absolutely.
again, sharing it with people that need to hear it. And I've had the experience of being able to connect with people in different countries, and it's such a neat uh, thing to be able to do that, because you can then start to relate to people from different cultures, and yet you know so much of what we're trying to do with our lives are the same, as
Yes.
women that are trying to share a message and share their light with the world. They want to be able to connect together. So when you can do that, it's such an eye-opening experience, and if we have that at our fingertips, we definitely need to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I actually was thinking that myself. I was thinking, my gosh, I honestly, at this moment in time, I have a client, two personal clients that I'm helping them with their story, and I'm helping them with live streaming. One is in Norway. I live just outside of San Antonio, Texas, and I have a client that I'm working with who is in Norway, and I have another client that I'm working with, and she is in Sweden.
Oh,
Now, I don't know how else on earth I would have
yeah.
connected with these women and be able to help them. And that's exactly what I'm finding, is that our language, I may not speak the same language. I mean, they speak English, thankfully, because I do not speak Norwegian or Swedish, but we don't come from the same background. We don't live in the same country. But as women, we suffer through and experience the same joys and lows, highs and goods. I mean, all the feels, right? These
Yes.
are moms, these are wives, they are daughters, and they are experiencing many of the same challenges and joys that I experience. And again, that's because we're having an emotional human experience, and that's why we can connect.
Yes.
So it's so true.
Well, I definitely feel like that this was a divine appointment today, designed by God, because I feel like a new person. I feel like I'm just completely inspired by everything that you've shared today. It's beautiful. It really is, April, and all the motivation behind why you're doing what you're doing. It's encouraging, and it's going to give a lot of people hope on this podcast. So I'm really excited that you were able to share this day with me in this episode, because I know that it's going to touch lots and lots of hearts. And I will
I appreciate
absolutely have to
that.
have you back.
I would love to come back anytime, anytime. I feel the same about you. We've recently connected online as a result of just being willing to show up, right? And we just had that instant connection. Of course, I feel the same about you. I see what you're doing and how you're trying to empower women and raise really good conscious leaders. And I think that the whole Shine On movement, it's
Mm,
all about doing the work that needs to be done in this world. And if we've been guided to be, a voice in that arena, then I accept it willingly, because I do
yeah.
believe it's something that is needed. We need more women using their voice. We need more women leaders. We need more women CEOs. We need more women entrepreneurs. We need,
Mhm.
more women just even even the smallest little things, sharing what it's like to be a daughter, sharing what it's like to be a wife, sharing what it's like to be a mom. That's not small, but some women think that that's just a little thing, right? But
Yeah,
it's such a big thing. We just need those stories. We need those stories out in the world.
we do. And every aspect that you just said is equally as important, because
Yes.
I think sometimes, like the stay-at-home moms, for
Yep.
example, feel like they're not as important because they're not out having this big career. They're watching their
Correct.
kids, and and yet it's one of the most difficult jobs, if not the most difficult job in the world. So I want to give so much credit to that. So that's such a great point. And just anybody in any situation, whether you're going through college, or you've just been through a divorce, or wherever you're at, and you're feeling challenged with something, I just want to encourage you today that there is hope despite all of the darkness that may seem like it's just resounding around you. So if you're listening in today and you're feeling discouraged, please know that there is hope around the corner. You just have to keep taking one step in front of the other. And for me, what's always worked is special time in prayer, and that's guided me through some of my darkest moments. And just hearing these stories of lifting individuals up. And as April had shared today, she's been through her ups and downs as well. And it's not something that happens overnight. It is a journey, and it's a process. And as she explained in her beautiful storytelling process, that it's going to take one step and lead you up to that climax point. Eventually we're going to get some resolution, and you're going to start to see maybe why things played out the way that they did. And then in fact be able to take that information and that story and share it with others that are going to potentially need to hear it. So really great thoughts today.
Thank you. And I think that's a really important thing to remind people that, their journey is a journey. And if they're on the side of the mountain that they're having to climb right now, to just know that there is the other side that awaits them, and to not give up. Just don't give up, and just keep climbing. You're tough, you're resilient, you have unbelievable power inside of you, and just keep climbing, because there is the other side that's waiting for you. And there's a whole bunch of women over there that need to hear your story.
Yes, so true. Well, April, where can the audience connect with you? What are the best places? And of course, I'm going to put all of this information in the content section so that they can click on the links and whatnot. But if you could also vocally share that, that would be great.
Yes. Well, I would say the number one place to connect with me, honestly, is in my private Facebook group, which is called Lightbeamers Community. I also have a public page called Lightbeamers that you can click on and like. But if you want to join our group for free, then that is the Lightbeamers Community. And that's a really important thing, is that word community. I really try to really make you feel like you are part of a community of women that are really kind of linking arms and doing life together, right? So please join us over there. I'm very active in that group. I pay attention to new members when they come in, and I want to make sure that you're finding a place. And, you can go to my website and learn more about, I guess, my services if you're feeling like you really need help figuring out your story, and you want someone to kind of hold your hand a little bit with that, then definitely go to my website, which is lightbeamers.com, and just explore all the fun stuff there. You will find those free storytelling guides and video guide there under storytelling services. So definitely, download those. They're absolutely free. We'll give you a lot of my tips on getting more comfortable on video. It will give you that storytelling formula once again, and give you a little workbook to work through that. Might be a fun thing for you to just journal through one day, and spend some time with yourself figuring out your own story.
Okay. Well, thank you so much again for being on this show today. We really, really appreciate you. We appreciate all that you're doing for so many. And I'm sure that there's just a countless amount of women that you've already touched, and you've created a tremendous ripple effect where one person is affecting another person. And that's what's so great about this whole storytelling process, is just knowing the exponential effect that it's going to have on all of these women and individuals, men too. So we don't want to leave them out of the equation, because they need to be inspired too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Genesis. I appreciate all that you do.
Thank you. And I will look forward to having you back again at some point as your community continues to grow. We can talk more about some of the amazing stories that you're sharing along the way.
I would love that. I would love that.
Thank you. And thank you for tuning in today again for another segment of Shine On Women. We really appreciate your listenership, and we're looking forward to you continuing to stay a part of this wonderful community where we're touching lives every single week.